Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, fellow councillors, officers. Welcome to the Alcohol and Gambling Licence Committee on the 18th of July 2022. Agenda item 1, evacuation procedure. There's a location plan of the exits and the assembly point situated on the doors of this room. Please familiarise yourself with it. On discovering a fire, please carry out the following. Sound the alarm. On hearing the evacuating signal, please carry out following again. Exit the building by your nearest safety exit, which is one of there. And for those who are not familiar, back out here and there's another door. All visitors report to assembly point G. All staff report to the designated assembly point on walkway car park. Do not leave the assembly point for any reasons until to do so by the incident controller or the fire brigade officer. Apologies for absence and members away on official council business. I've got apologies from Councillor Andy Jens, Judy MacDonald, Councillor Moss, Councillor Parker and Councillor Andy Wright. Kerry. Councillor Kerry Parker. Yeah. Disposal of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. No. Agenda item 4, the minutes of the Licence Committee held on the 25th of January 2022 will be approved for the correct record and signed by the Chairman. Somebody move those, please.
I'll move them, Chair.
Moved by Councillor Jordan, seconded by Councillor Hancock. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, application for review premises licence hearing at the Coach House, Coleshill. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube. I'll just go round the table and I'll just go round the table and introduce ourselves. I'm Councillor Denise Clues, Vice Chair of Licensing.
Hello, my name is Michelle Collett and I'm Licensing Admin Support.
My name's Dave Diver and I'm the Licensing Enforcement Officer.
Councillor Mark Jordan.
Councillor Marion Humphries.
Councillor Jane Farrow.
Councillor Eclipse.
Councillor Anne McLaughlin.
Councillor Simon Rose.
Councillor Dan Hancock.
Councillor Sandra Smith.
Sergeant Team of Warwickshire.
Sergeant Pete Oakley, also of Warwickshire Police, is licensing.
I'm Tom Brossi on the DPS of the Coach Hotel.
I'm Duncan Craig. I'm here to represent the licence holder. Thank you.
So, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
My name's Ken Dickon and I'm a customer.
So,
I'm Leon Broughty. I'm the managing director of the company that owns the Coach Hotel.
Georgina Twist, customer occasional husband.
Vanessa Broadway, neighbour to the Coach Hotel and against.
Councillor Caroline Simmons from Coleshill Town Council.
Dan Glastonbury from Cafe on the Hill, High Street, Coleshill. I don't know how to wear this line.
sorry, I'll introduce myself. I'm Toby, I'm Council's Head of Legal Services and to advise on law and points of order.
Thank you very much, everybody. This is a licence hearing, an application to view a premises licence hearing for the Coach House, Coleshill, 150 High Street, Coleshill. Clive?
For the benefit of all those who are here, I'll just go through the procedure because I know many of you won't have attended a hearing like this before. The chairman will shortly introduce the hearing, which is giving a very brief explanation of the application. And then what will happen is the licensing officer, Mr. Dye, will present the report briefly, which is just giving a background to the application, explaining what's been requested and the representations that have been received in support and against that application. Usually it's then the person who's made the application who presents their case first. And what we basically have is a process where each person who addresses the committee, first gets a chance to address them, and then the other parties and the members can ask them questions. That person who made the application isn't here tonight, so what we were doing is we were going straight to those who've made representations, such as the police, and then those others who've objected to the, or supported the application to review. And then it will move to the applicant's case, the licence holder's case, which the same process will be followed, and then those who are supporting the licence holder's case. Members will take account of the written representations that have been submitted. Everyone will get a chance to make a closing statement when everyone else has gone, just to sum up any points that they didn't raise in their first address, which come out of what the review said. I will then give you any legal advice that's required, and then the members are likely to ask everybody other than the councillors to leave the room so that they can make their decision, and then you'll be invited back into the room and they'll explain their decision. As we go along, anyone who doesn't understand what happens next, please ask and we'll explain again, and we'll invite you one by one to take part.
Can I raise a preliminary issue now? Or shall I wait?
Chair, I know, Chair. Obviously, it's in your discretion. I mean, if you want to hear these any preliminary issues that might be relevant to the conduct of the hearing.
Still, it's the non-attendant. Thank you. Am I to use this? Do I need to
Press the button.
Sorry, I hate these things. You think I'd be used to them by now. Good evening, everybody. I just want to check, Mr. Tobin. I'm not going to make the point too forcefully, but I think it's probably about I was trying to work it out on the way over, probably my 500th review hearing in the last 10 years, give or take. I've never known an applicant not turn up to their own review or their own review application. Have you considered whether that invalidates the application at all?
Chair, in terms of legal advice, there's regulations made under the Licensing Act, the Licensing Act hearings regulations 2005. They give rights to people to attend this hearing, to address you, and to produce other information in support of their application. It doesn't oblige them to do so. I agree fully. It's quite unusual that the person who's requested this hasn't attended it. I don't know if the licence officer can shed any light on in terms of the reasons for non-attendance. However, it's not something which negates the process.
Right.
Thank you.
What I also would add to that is obviously you would still consider his original written application, but of course you consider that in the light of everything else you hear from everybody, and without the opportunity of him giving any additional information and support.
Mr. Dyke?
Yeah, the applicant has just stated, and I quote, "I am unable to attend the hearing on the date specified."
Okay, thank you very much. So going back, this is a review of the licence for the Coke House 150 I Street, Coleshill, Birmingham. Are you happy to?
Of course, absolutely. I wasn't taking it any further than that.
Fine.
Don't worry, thank you.
That's fine. Members, we have the chance tonight to do this live as on YouTube, or we also have the chance to take this into private. Any suggestions, Councillor? Councillor Hancock?
I think it would be YouTube. It's a
Live.
hearing that involves the public, so I believe that this should be live on YouTube.
Members, you all agree with that? Thank you very much. Fine. Sorry about that. Not to,
Licence officer down to present.
all right. Mr. Dyke?
Well, this hearing brought under the Licensing Act 2003 and the Licensing Act 2003 hearings regulations 2005 to determine an application to review the premises licence of the Coach Hotel 150 High Street, Coleshill, B463BG. Application has been made by Mr. Bolton of High Street, Coleshill, B463BY. The legislation governing the termination of this premises licence review hearing is the Licensing Act 2003, which will just refer to as the 2003 Act. 2003 Act sets out 4 objectives, namely prevention of crime and disorder, promotion of public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and protection of children from harm. 2003 Act requires a licensing authority to carry out its functions with a view to promoting these licensing objectives. This application was received on 20th of May 2022 and the required 28-day consultation period ended on the 22nd of June 2022. The applicant is requesting a review of the premises licence, citing his opinion that the current premises licence holder is not complying with the four licensing objectives, namely prevention of crime and disorder. And I'm quoting, this premises heightens crime and disorder. We are all unaware of what is happening with the premises, but every evening as people leave, there's always ends up being fighting, smash bottle in the street and excessive noise. Preventative methods such as calling the police when fighting is used is never carried out by the coach hotel. The police can confirm this when there is a problem in the coach hotel. They are just thrown out onto the street and then lock their premises. This is not a good approach to crime and disorder prevention. My above email also references one customer leaving the coach and then throwing a bottle at my property, smashing the Town Council are happy to obtain photos from the security cameras. I also reference the parking of the cars of the people who attend the coach who park in the advisor and they're careful of this. They are also told to move by the owners with the security guards standing at the door. The next one is public safety, and I'm quoting again, in general terms, the locals do not feel safe around the coach, hotel, or with the type of people performing together in this establishment. I speak to many locals who say they cross the road before passing nearby. It's facing fear. I also reference the B46 based on Facebook, who I've mentioned a number of times the number of smash bottles and glasses in the road, the footpath, which is a hazard to their dogs and children. Now, number 3, if you follow in my report, you'll see I've made a mistake and I've had public safety twice. However, reading from the application to review, which you have got copies of in the packs, this is the prevention of public nuisance. This is probably the most significant point in this review. I believe my email and discussions above reference this considerably. However, if a local survey was done from the local residents, there wouldn't be many reports of this establishment. But after many years been associated with all the problems in the town, I've spoken with the police, the MP and the local town council, and they all are all aware of the presence and problems. It seems stranger that the licence has never been reviewed before this. And number 4, protection of children from harm. Whilst I hope that people that attend are all of age on the issues that arise are related, I would not like to bring up children in this area with fear of what happens on and around this premises. The current premises licence authorises the following licensable activities: sale by retail of alcohol, regulated entertainment by plays, films, live and recorded music, performance of dance, provision of facilities for dancing, late night refreshments. And the times that the licence authorises the carrying out of the licensable activities are plays, films and live music from 10 a.m. till midnight, Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. till midnight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Alcohol sales, performance of dance, provision of facilities for dancing and terminal hour for late night refreshment, 10 a.m. till midnight, Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. till midnight, Friday and Saturday, and 11 a.m. till midnight, Sunday. The opening hours of the premises are normally for 30 minutes after last permitted entry. We've had relevant representation received from Warwickshire Police, authorities and representations have also been received from local residents and businesses. Some of these representations address concerns relating to the licence and objectives, and others are in support of the premises licence holders. When considering the application, members, having regard to the application and any relevant representations, take such of the steps mentioned below, if any, as it considers it appropriate for the promotion of the licence and objectives. Modify the conditions of the licence, exclude the licensable activity from the scope of the licence, remove the designated premises supervisor, suspend the licence for a period not exceeding 3 months, or revoke the licence. And members must also have regard to statutory guidance which is issued under the Act. And the current version of this guidance was issued in 2018. Part 11 of the guidance relates to the reviews. Officers will refer members to the specific parts of the guidance at the hearing. Members must give their reason for the decision, and you will have attached copies of the premises licence, application to vary the premises licence, and any representation received.
I don't know if members have any questions that they want to ask clarification from the report.
Members, everybody okay with what Mr. Dyche just read out? You all understand that? Thank you very much.
If any report is open, just want to get anything clarified from the report, just anything that wasn't clear. So, the chair obviously normally would be hearing from the applicant at this point, and followed by those others who've made representations. Since the applicant isn't here, I think the easiest way to head straight to the police to present their case, and then we'll move through those who've made representations against the premises.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, following the application for the review, myself and my colleagues had a look to see how many incidents there were at the Coach Hotel. And we was quite surprised at the number of incidents that were occurring, especially late at night. As you may be aware, the coach was reviewed in 2018, where there was 13 incidents throughout that year. I appreciate that some of those incidents, I believe two of them were serious assaults. Following that review, quite a lot of conditions were put in on the premises to tighten up their conditions. When we looked at for May 21 to June 22, it was quite surprised to find 15 incidents recorded on our systems and one other incident that wasn't recorded. That incident was recorded on CCTV, but unfortunately, I believe there might be an issue with CCTV. For 15 incidents, it's mainly nuisance, ASB disorder. We get a lot of people, we get a lot of calls saying there's a large amount of disorder outside. Sometimes we attend, we get there, and members of the public disperse, or the issue has been resolved by the time we get there. If you were to look at section 7, indicates the time frame of incidents. As you can clearly see from 2300 hours, that's where section 7, page 17.
Is that 70 or 78?
17 or 78,
Thank
yeah.
you.
If you were to look at the table, it does clearly show that we do have the majority of our incidents occurring after 2300 hours. And the majority of them are occurring between midnight and 1 a.m. And that's majority of disorder outside the premises. And what concerned us most of all is when we considered similar premises nearby. If you were to look at section 8 on page 18 of 78, you'll see that the coach had significantly amount more incidents than nearby similar premises. We understand that there is conditions whereby there'll be a zero tolerance to drunken or antisocial behaviour, and all staff to be trained to ensure right departure of their patrons. We believe this isn't working. Although there's strict conditions in place, there's clearly an element of disorder, especially late at night. We understand this is having a significant impact on our resources and the members of the community. And we propose for the premises to be hours reduced to 11 o'clock rather than to 12 o'clock midnight, hopefully to lessen the impact on the local community. And the only other thing I was going to raise is the website for the coach. I assume this is a clerical error. It says that there'll be partying till 1 o'clock in the morning. The licensing hours are till 12. I'm not saying that has been breached, but it does need to be rectified on their website.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Councillor Phillips?
Were they informed about the correct time on the website?
I haven't had the opportunity, no.
I've seen something else. Councillor Jordan, then Councillor Nichols.
I should imagine a lot of hours have been spent now at this premises, just clocking up, sorting people leaving.
Yeah, it does have a significant impact on our resources. A lot of the units will be coming from Bedworth and Eton. So it does take us quite a while to get there. On a Saturday evening and Friday evening, as you can all imagine, we're at highest demand.
Councillor Humphries?
Thank you. Yeah, it still concerns me that we've got this problem for outside and in the streets and this sort of thing. So just taking it to 11, we're still going to have people hanging around in the streets causing concerns to neighbouring areas, although you're still going to be called. I think what we've got to stop is what's going on inside with the certain people that seem to have had too much alcohol in the first place. So that's something that we've got to be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just remind councillors that any questions have got to be relevant to the statements that the police have just read out?
Isn't that quite relevant, really? If we've got people coming out of the premises that are actually over intoxicated, that they haven't been able to stand up, and so they are not getting into taxis or something like that because maybe taxis aren't taking them, so they're hanging about, because this is now into 1 o'clock in the morning and they're still there. So that's what I'm thinking about. What's the relevance of what's going on inside to what's coming outside?
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
Councillor Ancock?
I think I'm going to add a question on to what Councillor Humphries. You're saying that 11 o'clock, reducing the hours to 2300 will change it. However, actually, there are still quite a lot of incidents happen between 2300 and midnight. Even though it increases into midnight, there are still quite a lot of issues, I would suggest, between 2300 and midnight. How do you feel then reducing that to 2300 would have a major effect on the issues that we're facing for you guys as police officers?
I believe potentially that there still will be issues there.
Okay.
However, I appreciate that the landlord or the premise does have to earn some money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it was still occurring at 2300 hours, there was no improvement with the training, with the zero tolerance, and then potentially we could come back for further review. Hopefully that won't be the case.
Thank you. Any more questions from this?
Yes, please. Just to be clear on this, you say incidents. I just want to be clear. If I was to call the police tonight at 11 o'clock and say there's a fight outside the coach, and the police were to go and turn up and there was no evidence of any fight at all, would that go on a log like this?
Yes.
And have you any idea how many of these complaints have come from neighbouring properties?
I would say half of the reports are from local residents. We've had a couple of reports from ambulance, and also would have a redirected call from West Midlands, and we've had one call from the coach itself.
Right. So, and you accept on here there are a number of so-called incidents where the police have turned up and actually they've found that what's been reported it isn't occurring based on what they've seen with their own eyes?
Yeah, I think it's like always when police attend, sometimes they can hear the sirens come in, so they disperse. It could be that police get there so late that they've dispersed themselves naturally.
Or it could be there was no incident at all?
Potentially, yeah.
And in terms of the premises themselves, it's right, isn't it? There are a number of other licensed premises in the locality.
That's correct, yeah.
And you've talked about local residents. You've seen the representations that have been in support of the premises from local residents. Would you accept that their representations must count for something in respect to this hearing?
I mean, that would be down to the panel.
Well, no, but you made a point of talking about the impact on the local community. Would you accept that the representations of people who are in support of the premises must carry as much weight as those who are against?
For those that are having their environment affected, then absolutely yes, the living standards.
And in terms of the evidence you're bringing to this hearing today, I just want to be clear on this, that there's council CCTV.
That's correct.
Also, when officers turn up, they'll have body cam, presumably.
Potentially, but it's not saved.
Okay. If any of the incidents were serious, presumably it would be saved.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so all we have before us today is a number of phone calls that have been made where officers have turned up, and in some instances there's been issues, and in other instances there hasn't. Is that a fair comment?
Yes, I'd say that, yeah.
Was there an incident at there was a fight, am I right, at the Coes Hill Hotel in December? Somebody was arrested?
That's correct, yeah.
Presumably that licence wasn't reviewed at the time.
No, we've looked at the amount of incidents, and I don't want to speak on it too much to the public, but there was very, very limited amount of incidents there. It's probably one of the best on the high street.
Do you accept that parking isn't really a consideration for today in terms of the licensing objectives?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just to follow up on that, would you say that for the size of the town, does the coach have an unusual amount of call outs, even if you turn up and there's nothing there and it's potentially dispersed? Did you go to many other pubs and?
Yeah, quite often we'll go to pubs, whether it's Coles or the Nuneaton, and a lot of the time, you know, our resources are tight at this point. You know, people do hear the sirens, people do sort it out themselves occasionally.
But there's usually more in this property.
Yes.
Could I just ask a question? I know part of the licence was CCTV, so if you turn up and there's any trouble inside the pub, is the CCTV footage always been available for you to look at?
I believe so, but most of the incidents do occur outside.
Thank you.
There is an external camera, by the way.
Any more questions in the room?
No. Then if we'd like to move to the next person who's made representation against the premises, so supporting the review. Who'd like to go first? Mr. Simmons, would you like to?
Thank you. My name is Councillor Caroline Simmons. I'm a Coleshill Town Councillor, and I'm here to represent some of the views that have been shared with the Town Council and reported to the Town Council, which is why the representation has come from them. As a Town Council, people often confuse who's the authority, so a lot of complaints or issues are raised locally at the Town Council and delivered to the Town Council, as opposed to perhaps being sent in directly to licensing. So that's why I'm sort of presenting the views that have been shared with us. A letter has gone in, and obviously it's part of the pack. But I'll just give a flavour of some of the complaints that been received by the town council in relation to the coach directly. And some of that is about sort of local resident experience of that complaint, and it's about the impact on them personally. And when they're trying to complain to the coach and raise it directly, they find that it's not necessarily responsive, and sometimes when they try to ring, when something is actively happening, they don't get a response on the telephone. There's a lot of issues around congregating in the street outside late at night and damage to property, and broken glass in the street in the morning after, Friday nights and Saturday nights, vomit in the street, cars blocking the road, and people spilling out into the street. So, as a town council, we've obviously been made aware of some of those issues in greater or lesser detail that emanate from the Coach Hotel Public House over a number of years, in particular recent months. Some of the incidents have been serious, but Coleshill Town Council members are appreciative of the efforts that have been made by the landlord to address the previous issues of antisocial behaviour that were raised at the last review, but feel that following the complaints that have been made most recently of antisocial behaviour, the rowdy behaviour, the noise, it said here they were fully supportive of the recent planning application to upgrade and extend the facilities at the coach because they felt that that would have an impact on the behaviour of that was emanating into the street. However, the progress that had been made appears to have more recently regressed, and they feel that the solution is not an easy one, but they offer the following as a way forward: that the coach closure time be reviewed to 10:30. Private celebrations, i.e. managed wedding reception being the only grounds for extension, any loud music to end by 10 p.m, and the police to be more involved via regular unannounced checks on the premises and immediate street frontage. Obviously, the Town Council have no desire to curtail people enjoying the night out, but it must not be at the expense of local residents and other visitors to the town. And to act now to not harm the activities here we feel would be failing the residents and their access to an undisturbed and safe quality of life. I would like to see some action taken to resolve the issue. It said if there's no agreed sustainable solution, then there seems little alternative but to look at revoking the licence currently held. It says the Town Council has CCTV systems and can provide images on request, but I'm aware that local neighbourhood police unit have access to the same supply of images and will be able to give more detail as to the number of 101 and 999 calls raised for disturbances. But obviously, the applicant is one of the complainants, as are several other residents and local people around there. But it isn't just residents that are immediately in the vicinity, it's people that comment to the Town Council about the state of the town afterwards. You know, when they're coming back in from events or nights out before, they can't access the street. There's quite often that feeling of when you might be somewhere abroad where the road is literally full of people and impassable. So it's those sorts of behaviours and antisocial behaviours I want to see an end to. Thank you.
Thank you, Town Councillor. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Simmons? Members?
Please. Councillor Simmons, first of all, you make reference to CCTV. Where does that CCTV cover?
The CCTV coverage of the High Street from Coleshill Town Council all the way up and all the way down to the bottom.
So it covers the front of the pub, yeah?
I'd have to check that actually.
Well, where is this footage you're talking about?
At the Town Council and is available to the police.
Have you served it as part of this review?
I haven't, no, but not personally.
Do you think that might have assisted matters?
Potentially.
Have you seen all the representations upon the review? Have you had a chance to read them all?
No, I haven't seen all the representations. I'm here to represent Coleshill Town Council with our representation from residents,
Okay.
rather than all of the representations that we've been to.
You're presumably here to represent all local residents, is that correct? As a council?
I am, yes.
And so what would you say if I said there were more representations in support of the premises than against the premises? What would you say to that?
In terms of the information available to the town council, in terms of the information that this has been put in on behalf of, as with many things, most people only contact you when they have a complaint, not when you've done something well.
Okay, so you think there'll be, but based on what you've said, a number of people out there who are happy with the place who won't make contact with you?
I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are plenty of local residents that use the coach and are happy with the facility and the pub. One of the comments that is often made is that it's a very different pub Monday to Thursday than it is Friday and Saturday. So I think some of the antisocial behaviour we're talking about can be identified and localised to particular days of the week at times, high days and holidays, obviously, and Friday nights and Saturday nights. That's the information that is provided to us from local residents.
Not strictly answering the question, but you talk about a number of representations that have been made to you. You could have redacted those. What you haven't served them as evidence, have you?
They're not just made to me. This is.
Well, I say you. I mean the council as a corporate entity.
So it's come. All of the town councillors that receive those again have put forward, and the clerk on our behalf has submitted this representation. I'm here to represent that this evening. So no, we haven't got all the individual ones that are given to us in passing, on telephone calls, in emails, or in councillor surgeries. No.
Do you accept as a town council you've obviously got a responsibility to represent local residents? Do you accept you've also got a responsibility to support local businesses?
Absolutely.
And local businesses that invest in the area?
Yes, of course. We do an awful lot of work with local businesses and support them in as many ways as we can. But there's a fine balance between keeping local businesses supported and local residents when they're having bringing representations about the impact, the quality of their living in Coleshill.
Presumably you would take into account positive impact premises would take out on people as well as negative.
Absolutely, which is why we were supportive as town council of the application for the premises to extend their hotel accommodation.
Well, you say that. If I could just, because I think within the representation it says, sorry, forgive me, is it Greatrex?
Yeah, Greatrex. He's our town clerk.
Thank you. He says in his representation, and was fully supportive of recent planning application to upgrade and extend the facilities of the Coach Hotel. I don't know if you've had sight of, I did a freedom of information request. It's been served on, I think the members have a copy of the supporting documents. If you do, great.
Could you just say what page?
Page 56.
No, I haven't. I haven't got that. No.
Well, I made a freedom of information request which was actually responded to by Mr. Greatrex, actually. I'll read the question out for you. Any information your public authority holds in relation to the Coach Hotel 150 High Street, Coleshill, in the last 3 years. This is to include any information regarding the planning application reference number. I won't read it out, I don't need to North Warwickshire District Council. The response from, and it was actually from Mr. Greatrex, which confused me a little. The committee recommended refusal based on increased volume of traffic from present and new patrons, and no explanation how this will be managed. Effective development on the character of the neighbourhood, the visual impact on neighbouring properties plus increase in noise, over intensification of the site. That was on the 8th of January 2020. And then following up from that, objections raised based on the same reasons previously recorded by the planning board regarding adverse effects on the surrounding public highway network and access to the site for vehicles not being suitable for the additional use. It was noted there are already residential properties surrounding the hotels which suffer currently from parking overspill. So that doesn't look to me like it's fully supported of the application. Would you agree with that?
No, I think at the time there were questions raised, but those objections weren't they weren't taken, they weren't considered to be issues that the Borough Council took into account, and therefore the planning application was granted.
Would you say that that was fully supportive of the application? That's the
No.
question. No. So would you say therefore that the representation that was made by Mr. Greatrix was false when he said it was fully supportive? You accept that it was false?
I don't know that it would be made to be false, no.
Or would you say it was correct, that the council was fully supportive?
At the time, possibly not, but I think moving forward, and there were parties to that site visit and spoke with the coach at the time. I think that they were persuaded that it actually wasn't a bad application, and went through that process alongside the Borough Council. They're a statutory consultee, they're not a planning authority.
There was, yeah, of course, and there was nothing in the freedom of information response that makes any reference to the council subsequently being, town council subsequently being fully supported, was there? I can't see that.
No, because it probably wouldn't come up like that.
All right, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question? Yeah, all of the representations that you've received, excuse me, all of the representations that you've received from the local residents, have you ever approached them or anybody in our business?
Well, yeah, because I came to that site visit and I actually talked to you.
Yeah, I'm speaking, not the planning application, which, as far as I'm concerned, you clearly objected to, made it very difficult at every stage, but I mean, that's my opinion. I'm speaking about the objections and representations you've had in terms of the licensing that you've just referred to. From all of the telephone calls, the surgeries, the emails, all the things that you just referred to. Have you ever approached me or indicated to us anything or opened any dialogue regarding any point?
I have spoken to you about a particular resident that lives behind you.
And when was this? Because I never recall speaking to you.
It was before the 2018 review.
Right.
So it was prior to 2018.
Yeah, it was before that review with a particular resident that was making a complaint then. Well, he used to contact me on a regular basis, almost every Saturday and every Sunday. But I'm here to represent one of 10 people. I'm not the only person that gets those representations, and they get funneled in through our clerk if we need to do anything like that. But they
Well, is anybody at the local town council, not just yourself, is anybody at the local town council brought that to our attention?
I don't know if they have individually. There's 10 people, so I can't speak for all the other 9.
Do you think maybe that may possibly have been a good idea if there is such a big issue as you put on?
I know that certain comments have been made and put forward to the licensing officer, not necessarily to you directly, myself, because I've talked to him about a particular resident who had particular complaints over a period of time.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that might have helped that conversation take place?
It always helps to actually engage, and I know it's the coach isn't somewhere that I haven't been put in or whatever. So I've talked to the people there, over people that work behind the bar when I've been in there, it's been on different days of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So everybody has a copy of it in front of them. I don't have to read the very beginning part of the email. Basically, I live right next door to the Coach Hotel. We are unable to sit in our garden in the evenings or weekends. The noise is so loud from next door. They're smoking drugs and they literally stand on the other side of the wall by us and it walks over. We can't have family friends over in the garden in the summer to enjoy sitting outside because, well, can't have our family getting high. 80-year-old parents can't get high from the fumes from next door. We're constantly having glasses thrown over our fence. We actually have a whole set sitting inside our garden at the moment. And they are being thrown over from the side wall, not from the front. So it is coming from the Coach Hotel. It can't be blamed on another premises. If they're not throwing them over the wall, then they're leaving them in our driveway. They also think that my gate is a public toilet. Unfortunately, I do not have photos because I don't think you guys want to see those photos. of them using it for urine, vomit, and excrement. Which we then have to clean up the next day, which isn't very nice when you're having to go out and do that, clean it off of your gates. And I've seen them walking back into the coach, so I know that they are coming from there. They also believe that my driveway is the pub's personal parking lot because the pub locks the gate, which I think should actually a fire hazard, locks their gate. So they park in my drive, which is our only access into our house. We have to drive in to park, and it's got to the point now we're unable to leave the house on a Friday or Saturday night because we can't get back into our house. I've been and asked numerous times for them to move, and I just get, well, from one of the bouncers, well, everybody's leaving in 20 minutes. Can't you wait? Should I just leave my car parked in the middle of the street? And then we have the fighting, the screaming, and the yelling that will continue on until well after 1 a.m. And to answer your question earlier about the CCTV, had I known, I would have actually gone and got that myself. Because when you say that the police turn up and there's no fighting, the CCTV would prove that there is fighting. We've had to call the police numerous times over the years. If by some chance we do happen to be trying to get in our gate at night, we get hurled abuse and threatened, which I did actually report to the police on one night. Some guy was parked in our driveway and threatened to stab me because I'd asked him to move his car, and then he drove off drunk, which when I found him, he was in the Coach Hotel. I have tried speaking to the owner in the past, and when I've gone politely to him as he's walked by my front of the house, he just starts hurling abuse at you and storms away and doesn't want to know. So trying to speak to them is impossible. We can't actually do it. And unfortunately, I have words that I could have added, but I didn't in this initial email, so I'm...
Thank you. Members, any questions? Councillor Phillips?
Yes, thank you. How many times have you raised issues with the staff?
I've been in quite a few times. I've been in one night and asked him to move the car, and he went, "Oh, I think I know whose car it is." He hadn't even been outside, so he knew whose car was there. I have been in quite a few times.
And you said that you encountered abuse. So what sort of abuse? Verbal, threatening?
Verbal, and the man that came out threatening me because I had asked him to move his car.
Just specifically staff?
Yeah, the bouncers just tell me to wait and, you know, piss off. Don't worry about it. They're not dealing with it. It's not their problem.
And the glass bottles? Do you think the pub are aware that they are their glass bottles?
Well, they should have that many missing that they should be aware. Right. We have over the back of our fence at the very bottom of the garden where no one else can get to. They're thrown over. It's in brambles. I'm not going in to pick them out. And at the front, they throw them over. I've got at least 8 glasses sitting there right now.
And you raise up with them?
I can't speak to them. I've tried.
Councillor Humphries?
Can I just have clarification of what gate this is that's locked? Please.
What page is the map?
What page is it on, or what would?
The gate you mentioned to the premises.
It's a gate, and that's all I know at the moment.
It is the gate to their premises, to their parking lot.
If you look, we're looking at the coach.
Yeah.
Just to the right, the entrance to the car park, and then there's a gate. And we open those at will. Obviously, all bits will be
Now I know what gate it is. Can I please ask why is it locked?
It's locked because we've got man security at an evening time. So obviously it's locked, but we will open it and close it to let people enter and exit. But the idea is that any patrons who enter in our licence, it's part of our licence that everybody has to be searched. So when the gates are closed, it ensures that everybody's entering through the front door. They have to be searched. They're not sneaking around the back. Obviously, anybody who needs to park the vehicle is a customer, more than welcome to open it. We pay nearly £900 per week for security, and we have manned security on that gate, who coincidentally is right next to this lady's house as well. So I mean, I'm
And
slightly
they still
lost
let
as to-
people park there.
Councillor Hancock.
Just to confirm, you said before to the previous representation that no one had come to you.
Chair,
That's
can I just
correct.
say,
We
we're
just-
just sort of
Yeah,
moving
it's-
away from the format because
It's got to be
this
to
is
the,
questions today who's just
Yeah.
addressed you.
How many times have you been to the licensee about the issues that you've had? Is it once,
Quite a
twice,
few
three?
times, every time that there's someone
To
parking in
this
my
gentleman
driveway. To
specifically?
this gentleman specifically, and to this gentleman,
More than once.
Okay,
just.
I have spoke to you many
Sorry,
times.
Sorry, how many times is that? Would you say 2, 3, 4?
We're talking like more like 6, 7, 8.
Thank you, that's fine. Thank you.
6, 7, 8.
I'll start recording it next time I come in.
Consider that. I want to ask questions. We've been asked and you keep over talking. You know, no, okay, can we do it right? Thanks.
Any more questions, councillor? No.
So just to be clear, you say in your presentation, tried speaking to the owner of the pub in the past, and he just started screaming at me. So who was it who was screaming at you?
This gentleman here.
I found that very odd. Okay. Anton, have you got any?
The only time I recall ever speaking to you was once, which was fairly recently, when you came in. That's the only time I've ever seen you in the premises. It's certainly the only time I've spoken to you. And when you came in, you asked me there was a vehicle in front of your car. I was where you were in front of your gates, excuse me. I went round and asked, I happened to have seen somebody park there. And I went out and removed it from you. Other than that time, could you explain to me what are the other 6, 7 times you've spoken to me? Because I've never spoken to you
One at a
more than
time,
that time.
thank you.
Well,
Just,
if we could start going back to the
I'd be
CCTV,
intrigued to know.
It's-
I'd be intrigued to know.
it's
I'm
quite
asking you a
often,
question.
I'm trying to answer you.
Times.
It's quite often on a Friday night because I'm usually working and it's usually around 9 o'clock that cars are starting to park in my driveway, and it's when I'm having my break from work, because I do work as a remote worker from home, and I will come around, and there's many times that you can check the CCTV of the lady going around in her pajamas.
I also have CCTV.
And I have come in there many times.
Have you got specific dates when you say you spoke to my client?
I don't actually recall specific dates.
When?
No, I
Which
will
ones?
start recording them on my phone from now on.
Thank you. Any more representations?
The gentleman just speaking.
I apologise. I'm Dale Glastonbury from Cafe on the Hill. I apologise. I had problems opening my email, and I did phone to speak to David last week, but he didn't get my message, and I didn't get a call back. I'm here really to.
You're supporting.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. This is, at this stage, it was just those who were opposing the premises, so it was supporting the application to review. So you'll get an opportunity to
Okay,
speak
sorry.
at the moment, but there was no one else who was speaking
Apologise.
about problems with the premises. Right? Now, Chair, I don't know if at this point, bearing in mind the conditions, if everyone's comfortable, fine, but I don't know if it's worth having a couple of minutes break if people want to get some water or something like that.
Yes, please.
That'd be
What should we say?
Convenient point.
7 o'clock?
Would that-
Is that 5 to?
Oh, well, it's 10 to on mine.
Yeah.
10 minutes?
So say 5 past.
Fine, on that
Thank you
one,
very
yeah,
much.
fine. Thank you.
There is drinks on.
Thank you very much.
You can go to Warrington and I'll do your own thing.
That's just something like that. I'm back in, I think.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, so councillors, officers, we are back into this hearing. Mr. Gray.
Me, is it? Okay. I only just decided what order I'm going to do it in. What I'm going to do first, I have served some. I'm going to do that because I'm not the most tech savvy of legal professionals, to say the least. There are 7 videos for me to show, all of which are very short in duration. Will be all pleased to hear, I'm sure. I'll give you an overview. I'm in now, right? I'm in. So let me go this second. Please. It's not letting me click the box that says share. I don't know. I tried that. Doesn't work.
No, I think only the host can share on Teams. So only the host of the meeting can share.
Right.
Unless they select.
Unless they can select participant to share.
Everybody's up for share.
Everyone can share, okay.
I changed the settings so everybody can share.
I'm very sorry about this. I was expecting just to plug an HDMI in. Getting called from the meeting.
That might be me, so apologies for that. Just click on your name just to see what rights you have. And, so if you just ignore that, we'll just reject it.
Sorry? Is the meeting. We can share. Okay.
Save the same.
No, I don't even know. Just I need to change. What's it? You're not on Teams. There is a. I don't know. I don't know if you can go straight into the TV, but I don't know how to set the Teams meeting.
Unless committee services have the files that I've served and can be played from that computer, so I don't know.
It's clear showing that everyone's got presenting rights. I really don't know why it's not showing it for you, because it's drop down box and it says everyone has presenting. It says who has presenting rights. It says everyone. So
can I just make a suggestion? Can I send you another meeting link from the organiser? That might be why it's not working. So if I send the invite to you.
Yes, please.
Can I? Would you like to write your email address down for me? So
yeah, I'm happy. No, it's available online. I'm happy for everyone to have it. The more the merrier. It's Duncan.Craig at Citadel Chambers, CITADEL Chambers, that's one word. CITADEL, Citadel.
Chambers.
Yeah, I must have said that CITADEL over about 10,000 times, I reckon.
Chambers.
.com.
.com.
Yeah.
Right, just bear with me.
Sorry about this, everybody.
It is that little break.
So I thought I was all good to go, and then something's come through. So should I leave the meeting?
Yeah, leave the meeting as you were, and rejoin using the link. And then you should hopefully have be able to present.
Oh, let me do it. Is there an HDMI cable that I can link up?
Chair, I don't know if it's.
There is a HDMI in there, but I don't know.
It's perhaps appropriate just to adjourn the meeting again for a couple of minutes.
I'm very sorry, everybody.
Try to sort this out. It's obviously it's something that was served in advance and therefore can be relied on. So it will have an impact on presentation if not able to show it. We'll try and find a way around it.
Broadcasting through. Evening again, members. Due to the nature of the video that's going to be shown, I believe that under the hearing regs of
It's the Licensing Act 2003 Hearings Regulations 2005 states that council may exclude the public from all or any part of the hearing when it considers the public interest in doing so outweighs the public interest in carrying on.
So I'd like to propose that we go in to the MC and watch this video. Have I got a seconder? All those in favour? Thank you very much. That means member of the public.
Thank you very much indeed. I think following on from that, I'm going to deal with the review application itself, the actual narrative in there. Because as I have already said, there are a number of assertions contained within the review application that is not accepted by the licence holder. I have to say this, I find the notion that Leo, the father of the Agroites, would shout at anyone to be, based on my experience, frankly laughable. I've had dealings with him for a couple of years now, and it's just not in his nature. He's just not that type of person. So I feel compelled to say that before I start. He has 40 years experience in the trade, which I would hope would count for something when you deliberate today. So first of all, I'll deal with the review application because I think it's important in the light of what you've seen. First of all, referencing bottles thrown at my premises on the evening of the 19th. Well, this was composed when the applicant had, of course, we say, and he's not here to refute it, and you're absolutely certain, Tim, aren't you? 100%. Has thrown a glass. Maybe that's why he's not here, I don't know, has thrown a wine glass into the reception of the premises, and I would just invite you to consider that. It's not the most overwhelming point I'm going to be making today, but I think it is of some merit that people who would make review applications should do so in good faith. They should do so on the basis of what they're saying being consistent and truthful and fair, and a representation of the facts. And if, for example, if a police officer had done that after making a review application, well, they would be in serious trouble. And this application has been deemed relevant. It hasn't. I didn't make any representations on it being vexatious because I couldn't, in all conscience, do that. I thought about it, but I couldn't do that. And we've tried to be as fair as we can at this end. But that is not behaviour that any right-thinking, decent, responsible individual could in any way condone or support. And that is the person who has made this application. You know, he's talking about the noise could be heard from within our house, which is triple glazed window. I don't accept that, and there's two reasons for that. You've seen the dB readings. I visited the premises on a Friday night. I've been inside. It's relatively loud inside. The music, it's of a volume. You know, it's the typical volume that you would get from a pub in a town centre. I expect it's similar to other pubs in the town centre. I walked across the road. You could barely, when the doors opened, you could barely hear anything from the outside of the front of the premises that the applicant lives in. There's absolutely no way that there would have been anything audible inside the premises. By the way, Anton didn't know I was coming. I just turned up. I was on my way to my mum and dad's in Manchester. I stopped off en route. And so I can say with absolute confidence, based on my view, that is simply not correct. That anything can be audible inside those premises over the road. It also goes on to say every evening, again, that's just not supported by any evidence. Every evening, as people leave, there always ends up being fighting, smashed bottles in the street and excessive noise. preventative methods such as calling the police when a fight ensues is never carried out by the coach hotel. Well, you've heard from Warwickshire Police, that's not correct. The premises do call the police. And that's part of the police evidence. And then the problem is the coach hotel there just thrown onto the street for them to deal with off the premises. Well, again, that's not true. And an example of that is the incident where there was somebody run over by a taxi, which is in the police log. Well, that was somebody was run over by a taxi in the street, and nothing to do with the premises at all. They've not been in the premises. You called the police, called the ambulance service, and you tended to them, didn't you?
Yeah, my security staff tended to.
And that's on the log. That's on the police log as an incident. So I'll just invite you to take that into account. It then goes on to talk about someone throwing a bottle at his property. Don't need to comment on that, I guess, any more than I already have. I think I've made my point regarding that. And then it goes and said the town council are happy to obtain photos from their security camera of this. Where are those photos? Where is that footage? It's not here. It's not before you. And I'm just going to make a point. You cannot speculate as to anything that is not before you. You are here to determine this application upon the evidence that's been served. There was nothing stopping the town council. There was nothing stopping Warwickshire Police serving CCTV footage to support their case. None of that has become forthcoming. You are being invited to determine this business and the viability of this business based on a few logs, based on phone calls that people have made. And I would submit, and I'll make this point at the end, that it's simply not enough for you to touch this licence in my professional view. It then goes on talk about people who attend the coach, who park on the double yellow lines, have no care for others. Well, there is a parking problem there. I accept that. I've been and had a look. There are issues with parking, but that isn't restricted to people who use the coach. It's restricted to people who use the high street. And just to be clear, so you know, the coach is there. Cozo Hotel is literally next door. It joins it.
Yeah.
And then you've got the red line, is it? Across the road. So you have 3 licensed premises, and how people can say with such certainty, in such strident fashion, that these incidents emanate without any supporting evidence, by the way, emanate from the coach. That simply is not supported by the evidence that is before you. The review application then goes on to say, in general terms, the locals do not feel safe around the coach hotel or with the type of people that are forming together in this establishment. I'll make 2 points about that. There are more people who've supported the pub than have supported the review application. Local people who've lived in the area for 25 years, 22 years. You live how far from the pub? As close as the applicant.
Maxed out line, a corner of maxed out line.
Close as the applicant. Okay, they'll just invite you to take those local voices into account. Then it said there wouldn't be many in support of this establishment. Well, it's unusual to get any support in respect to a review application, particularly if it's a local establishment that's causing significant problems to people in the area. And I'll deal with representation shortly. I'm going to be with you some time, by the way. I have to warn you about that because there are a number of issues I've got to deal with. And then it goes on to say, I believe as part of the licence, they're required to keep noise to a certain level and have a security camera on the premises. I don't believe they have either. Well, that's not the case. They are required to keep noise to a certain level, and they do. There's no evidence to contradict that. In actual fact, your environmental health have investigated this and not established any statutory nuisance in association with these premises. And there's no suggestion that security cameras not being used. It's been used. It has to be used. It's available, and it's available to the police at any time if they want a copy of the internal or external footage. None of that is before you today because the police haven't requested it in respect of any of those visits. So there's nothing to support the review. Then. From that point of view. I then turn to the premises licence, which I believe is the next section in the agenda pack. A little confused about the hours because I thought I was going mad at one point, but I think it says Monday to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but I think it's right that all the hours are just the same throughout the week, I think, aren't they? No, that's right, Mr. Dave, thank you. So the hours are 10 a.m. to 2400 hours to midnight. And that is in respect of regulated entertainment and the sale of alcohol, and then late night refreshment has the same terminal hour, but as we all know, that doesn't commence until 2300 hours. Obviously, you've got the mandatory conditions, and to go through those with anybody. Requirement that door supervisors to be employed on a Friday and Saturday, so only on a Friday and Saturday are they required. You've got things like, so I'm not going to go through these but I'll just make the point. There's a dispersals policy in open vessels, DPS strategic drugs policy, body worn. It's a very heavily conditioned licence, no question about that. So I have contemplated any conditions that might be able to assist this. But if we turn to the public nuisance, which is really what this is about, frankly, antisocial behaviour, public nuisance, there are a number of conditions there. Prominent notices to be placed at every exit. When regulated entertainment takes place, all doors and windows to be kept closed. Licence holders should not permit noise emanating from the licensed premises to unreasonably disturb persons in the neighbourhood. Licence holders shall ensure that whenever regulated entertainment takes place within the licensed premises, such entertainment shall not be such as to be a statutory nuisance. But we know that's not the case from your own environmental health, the nearest noise sensitive or residential premises. And whenever live or recorded music takes place at the premises, the DPS or responsible person shall monitor the noise levels at the boundary of the premises. You can see that. So they're all being adhered to. There's no suggestion that they're not. And it is not accepted by the premises that the amplified music that is within the premises is causing a statutory or public nuisance to the applicant's property. Certainly based on my observations, that certainly is the case. And so I'm of the view, given that there are a lot of conditions on the licence already, that there aren't any further conditions. The only thing I will say, I don't think this can properly be conditioned for reasons which I'll explain. My client is committed to these premises, has been committed to these premises, has spent a lot of money in developing and putting rooms in there, and I'll turn to that in due course. But you are installing double glazing to all the windows at the front, triple glazing, sorry, forgive me, sorry, 50%, selling you short by 50%. But you don't know when that'll be, do you?
Well, then again, that would depend on planning. It's a great touristic building, so that's how it's
if feasible, but there are a number of hurdles to jump through, so it wouldn't be right to impose that as a condition because we don't know when that's going to happen. But certainly that is an aspiration of the business to do that, and certainly there is a requirement that the doors and windows are kept closed whenever regulated entertainment takes place at the premises. It says here, I mean, the police have said, responsible management at all times, zero tolerance to drunk or antisocial behaviour. They're not appreciable. First of all, question how enforceable that condition is. But on the basis it is enforceable, it's not accepted that there isn't zero tolerance. That isn't accepted. It's not accepted that the log that's been presented to you, I'll turn to that shortly, is in any way a clear reflection on these premises. And as I say, I'll turn to that in due course. So that deals with the premises licence. I'll then turn, if I may, to the representations that have been made. I think it's right that I respond to the reps that have been made in a level of detail. Obviously, I've asked questions in relation to that, and you'll have drawn your own conclusions from the answers that were made. But the first one that's in there is from Joanna Coles. I think she makes a number of observations about people in the vicinity of the Coach Hotel. Well, I've already said that there are a number of licensed premises in that neck of the woods. It makes reference to issues around taxis. It acknowledges that some of the issues they have, whilst do not relate directly to the premises in question. Goes on about standards within the town precinct. I don't believe that Joanna Coles's representation is particularly aimed at the Coach Hotel. It's a more of a general comment on what she sees as the malaise in the town itself. I don't think there's any specific allegations against the premises about a particular incident that is directly attributable to them. So I'll just make that point in respect of her. The next, number 2, Borja de Maca has not disclosed that he is the partner of the applicant. there's no reason why he can't make a separate representation, although it is a bit of an odd thing to do. Normally, when people live together, they would make a joint application, and he's not disclosed that, but they are partners. That is correct. He goes on to say this business has nothing but given nuisance to all the residents that live nearby. Well, I'll let you draw your own conclusions from what some of the residents who live nearby are going to say about the premises and how accurate that statement is. It then goes on to say, bizarrely, main issues every Friday, Saturday and bank holidays has become a nightclub for the young teenagers wishing cheap drinks and drugs. It then goes, I cannot confirm or deny that underage drink individuals are being served within the premises, but makes no comment on the drug situation, which is just frankly bizarre. I just can't get my head around that. And that's a more serious allegation. It's completely denied by the premises, by the way. Easy thing to throw about, really easy thing to throw about. He does say we've got single glazed windows. Well, I've addressed that, and that is correct. The other thing is, security has also allowed consumers to take pint glasses and glad bottles to the street front, which is either left on the street, smashed against properties. I'll also make a point about the broken wine glass again, or used for fights, which also happen incredibly often, creating a very safe area for bypassers if they find themselves in the cross line. So he then goes on to say about 3 points. He goes on about nitrous oxide bottles. You got no, that just doesn't occur, does it? Not in the car park, as has been alleged. And then he's talking about the trading time, glibly talking about the trading time being reduced to 9 p.m. I'll then turn, if I may, to page the fourth representation. I'm going to go back to the third shortly, because it's worthwhile me making that point. And that, of course, is from Vanessa Broadway, who you've heard from. There are a number of matters in there my client takes significant issue with. I took instructions on this before. I'm taking instructions now. My client, how many times have you met her, Heather?
Met her, no. I'm being introduced to her.
It is simply, we say it is simply not the case that either of these individuals, collectively or individually, have met Miss Broadway on 6 occasions. She was unable to provide any dates. She was unable to provide any particulars. You said you met her once. It's absolutely denied that there's drug smoking going on in the garden. I think there are going to be comments from other people here about glasses in general terms, but certainly the matters that are contained within that are refuted in very robust fashion. I then turn back, if I may, to representation 3. Well, I did agonise over this actually, but I decided upon reflection I would include this. Number 3, I support the application for the licence of the coach being reviewed. I've checked this address, by the way, 19 Digby Road. It's some distance away. It doesn't mean people aren't entitled to make representations, but it was the wording of it that struck me. As a local resident, we all know the issues surrounding the coach, and this has been going on for years. The town would be a much better place if this pub was brought under control. There were a number of anonymous representations that were made in respect of this application, which weren't contained in the agenda pack. Because you're, of course, being asked by people who sit to my right, that there's an overwhelming picture of these premises providing a level of nuisance to the town. That is simply not accepted by the licence holder, and it certainly is not in accordance with the evidence that's before you and the representations that have been made by local people in support of the premises. We've asked you to turn to page 49 in my supplementary pack. Sorry. These were all representations that were made from anonymous sources, from as I understand it, a load of generic email accounts. Duncan Craig 1234 at hotmail.co.uk, for example. And obviously that wasn't the precise one. And there are striking similarities between that representation and these. Number one, as a local resident, we all know the issues surrounding the coach, and this has been going on for years. The town will be a much better place if this pub was brought under control. Number two, as a local resident, we all have concerns surrounding the coach hotel, and the issues have been going on for a long time. The town would be a much better place if this pub was brought under control. Representation three, as a local resident, we all know the issues surrounding the coach, and it's been going on for years. The town would be a much better place if this pub was brought under control. Number four, as a local resident, we all know the issues surrounding the coach, and it's been going on for years. The town would be a much better place if this pub was brought under control. Number five, there isn't about the issues, but it does go on to say the town would be a much better place if this pub was brought under control. Number six, as a local resident, we all know the issues surrounding the coach, and it's been going on for years. The town will be a much better place if this pub was brought under control. Number seven, as a local resident, we all have concerns surrounding the coach hotel, and the issues have been going on for a long time. I'm not going to keep reading it out. It applies to representation number 7, representation number 8, representation number 9, not, to be fair, number 10 or 12, but it does apply, there isn't number 11 for some reason. It does apply to numbers 13, 14 and 16. So the overwhelming majority of these appear to have emanated from the same source, which would suggest, again, a straight back not being deployed. And of course, I would love the opportunity to ask questions of that particular representator who has used that, deployed that particular choice of words. Forgive me, I'm just finding a representation. That is Jessica Grove. That's a very bizarre set of review. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions from that. We'll then turn, if I may, to the police evidence. First of all, if I may, within the police pack, at page 15 of 78. May 25th of last year. In fact, look, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to go through the ones that are in the last 12 months. I think that's appropriate, actually. I'm conscious I won't be going on all night. So I'm going to go from number 6. Just safe to say that these are all, again, from calls that have been made. We know not from where, but we think we've got a reasonably good idea where some of them have come from. I'll move to number 6 first. Call from staff, 5 males fighting. They're moved from the car park. Further call to West Midlands Police reporting 10 people fighting. Police attended, no injuries, and waited until the group had left in taxi. So it is acknowledged, that one. The premises have called, and there was an incident. It wasn't nearly as bad as it's made out on that, was it? Next one. So that's a year ago, give or take, a bit less, 11 months. October, report of a domestic incident, female very drunk. I don't really know what that means. Doesn't really take us anywhere. Next, report of a large disorder. Police attended at 22:54, which is 15 minutes later. No trace of disorder. 50 to 60 persons inside. Staff had no knowledge of disorder. That is what Warwickshire Police are asking you. Are talking about incidents at the premises. They're talking about that as an incident. Report of a large disorder, police attended, no trace of disorder, 50, 60 persons inside, staff had no knowledge of disorder. How is that an incident? How can that even begin to be an incident? Number 9. Reports of customers at the premises leaving and urinating in neighbours' driveways. Well, how do we know that they've come from the coach hotel? How do we know that? What evidence is there to support that? None. No CCTV. Just what, a report from where? From what source? Number 10. Initial report to the police was there had been an assault. The victim was not breathing and has been run over by a taxi. Ambulance and police attended. The victim was breathing and had a head injury. They had been pushed over by a male. Persons present very intoxicated. Further reports of sexual assault perpetrated by the male suspect. That was somebody who got run over on the road by a taxi in the street. That's the one, isn't it? Nothing to do with the premises. The premises attended to them. The door staff attended to them.
Yeah, but we have a female door staff who's she also works in the NHS, so she attended to her and something. I've got basic first aid training, but she's far more advanced. And it was something she happened to see that was also long after we closed. We were all going home and we happened to see it. So
that's another incident that Warwickshire Police are asking you to rely upon in order to cut the hours of these premises, where they've actually assisted somebody who's been run over by a taxi driver who's nothing to do with them. That's an incident. Number 11, reports of illegal parking by customers, not taken us anywhere, that one. Number 12, reports of a female having a fit and a group of males fighting. Female had been punched in the head and was taken to hospital. Male also present with a bloody nose. Do you want to comment on that beginning of January? Do you know anything about that?
it's not something that rang a bell with me, I'm afraid. It didn't, especially at that time of the morning, 1:15. We stopped serving at 12 o'clock. Everybody's left the premises at 12:30. So it's not something that I was aware of. It was long after we closed and everybody had left our premises. It's while the neighbouring pubs were still open, but we were certainly shut and our premises had no customers in.
Yeah, and obviously, if there was any suggestion the premises was open at that time, I'm sure the police would have been aware of it and would have taken the CCTV footage. Number 13, report of an assault by a bouncer, bleeding from the nose. CCTV showed the bouncer being assaulted. It was the bouncer who's been assaulted. Again, goes to show you how you can't necessarily rely upon what you see on the police log. Next, male refusing to leave. Staff refused to remove male. What that means. Police attended and removed male. So yes, okay, there's an incident there. Police have removed a male. 22nd of May, male standing outside front entrance approaches a group of males opposite in a fight shoes, catch up. We've not got the CCTV. But they were stood outside the front of the premises. We don't know if they've been in the premises. And next, it goes vehicle parks next to the front entrance at 6048. Patron exit the premises and disorder takes place. I don't know what the nature of the disorder is. It could have just been an altercation. So I would say in the course of the last 12 months, you take out the ones where there's not been anything, there's probably 3 or 4 incidents in a 12-month period. So to suggest that that is a pattern of a premises that's falling apart and is causing huge issues locally simply is not borne out, even by the police logs. Okay, and if any of these incidents were serious in any way, then we'd be in a different territory in terms of the fact that the police would have reviewed this, which they haven't. The person who's reviewed it isn't here. It was somebody who smashes glasses in people's porches. So I just make that point that it's been presented to you, and a number of the comments that were made by members, I have to comment on this, was that there was it was almost like it was a fait accompli that what the police have presented to you as a log is representative of 16, well, it's not 16, is it? If I take it from in the last 12 months, what the police are saying is there are 11 incidents, 1 a month. And we say it's probably one every 3 months. And this is a town centre pub. And I would say, based on my professional experience, that's probably what you would expect from most town centre pubs, is incidents every 3 months. Arguments on the street, people coming out at night. And of course, what we don't know, there is nothing in any of these logs that provides verifiable proof, except maybe in a couple of them, that it is linked to the coach. None. Okay. It could, in fact, where it's 1 in the morning, it's actually more likely that it's from another premises because they are open till later. And I'll turn to the opening hours shortly. So that is the it deals with the police representation. I'll then turn. Obviously, I don't need to turn in too much detail, but there are a number of representations which don't copy and paste each other in a suspicious fashion. You'll have read those, I'm sure, but I think it's right just to say Georgie sits behind me, so she's perfectly capable of speaking for herself. Ken sits behind me, he's perfectly capable of speaking for himself. Matthew Petch is not here. He says the weekend entertainment is no louder or different than the other local pub in Coes Hill or any throughout Birmingham. It's policed in a firm but fair way by their security and management, and is always an enjoyable night with a good mix of people. And he goes on to say, it's common knowledge that properties near pubs sell with discount rates, and I think it's unreasonable for people to then complain about everyday activity associated with any pub after the event. The coach has been there since the 1800s and shouldn't be victimised because somebody has decided to convert a public building into residential use and then decided they don't like living opposite the pub. I'll then go on to Mick Dale, because he's not here. I think it's right that I speak on his behalf. I'm a resident of Coes Hill, local businessman and patron of the Coes Room for years. I've seen many different owners and managers of the hotel and wish to express my gratitude to the current landlord and his family. They're putting a huge amount of effort and their own money into improving the business, which had been failing and neglected for a long time before. The letter of complaint against them on your website doesn't reflect a well-run pub that is popular among the town and its residents. Then is one from Palm Tree Travel. I'd like to give my support towards the premises. They support us in our business as a small business owner and have recommended us to lots of their customers. It's a welcome establishment and the owner has done a lot of work inside the pub to refurbish both the bar and allow us to a high standard. I will, there's then one from Upper Crust. So I think you're here, aren't we? No, sorry, forgive me. It talks positively about the premises. You've seen from environmental health. I'm not sure if this is strictly a representation. It's an information exercise, and it basically says previous investigation of environmental health will not determine noise from the coach hotel to be sufficient to constitute a statutory noise nuisance that arises from noise in the street which does not emanate from the premises. We'll continue to investigate complaints and we'll take action where this is necessary, which is absolutely right, by the way. They have a statutory duty to do so. I'm briefly going to turn to my supporting document or supporting document. Well, it won't take a huge amount of time. And I won't go through the premises licenses, but I put them in there just to demonstrate the veracity of what I'm saying here. And it's right to say, I have to, in the interest of full disclosure, I've said maximum hours. This is page 1, maximum hours for licensable activities. So what that means is, for example, maybe on a weekend it goes at 1 o'clock, but maybe in the week it's only midnight, for example. So that is one example. But at the end of the day, I've given the maximum scope for licensable activities on each of these licenses. And as you can see, the Coach and the Green Man and the Swan all have midnight. And then you have the Coes Hill and the George and Dragon, perhaps most relevantly, till 1 a.m. The Bell is 1 a.m. and then the Red Lion is 4 a.m. Now, I know every case is treated on its own merits, but it's absolutely right against the context of what is being alleged here and against the background of allegations that nuisance is irrevocably is the wrong word, unquestionably emanating from these premises. Well, when you've got an incident at 1 a.m, I think it's more likely to be coming from the George or the Coes Hill Hotel, frankly, given that you absolutely you invite these guillotines and you won't be there. So I just make that point because a lot of these things in the report, there's no way of verifying with any degree of, I'm not talking about certainty here, even on the balance of probabilities of knowing where those incidents have arisen from in the first instance. I'll then invite you to turn to page 31. And whilst this isn't necessarily overwhelmingly relevant, you're not here to consider the finances of a licensed business. Certainly, it's not a primary consideration. I know Mr. Tobin will advise you suitably in relation to that. It is important to convey in a public hearing to a public authority the amount of pressure that licensed businesses, all businesses, are under at the moment, both in terms of recruiting staff and the impact on overheads. And so, for responsible authorities and other people in the room to just glibly talk about losing an hour as if it's not a big deal, well, it's a big deal to this business. It's a big deal to this business, and potentially an existential threat to this business. And I just make the point that you have invested how much in the property?
I'm just half a million, and we've got planning permission to build another 10 bedrooms and extend the existing function room, which would go into 7 figures.
So these are people who are looking to invest in the local area, employ people locally, provide amenities to the local population, and obviously are under pressure. So I guess the point that I make by putting and you can see it's basically gone from the kilowatt hour has gone from 2.25 up to 5.2. So it's doubled, basically. It's doubled sorry, forgive me, it's not doubled. It's gone from 2.25 to 5.2 up to 7.2. Sorry, so it's basically, give or take, more than trebled. Actually, it's more than trebled in 2 years. So I guess any determination that you make today has to be a proportionate one. And I would just invite you again as well to consider that against the pressure that this business and other licensed businesses are under. You know, what this isn't what you're being asked by the police to do is to shave an hour off the hours. And what we're saying is that is going to be another that may cause you not to invest in the property in full. It's not a threat. I'd certainly not do that. I would never do that in a hearing. It's not my style, but it's absolutely right that I've just said.
It's the difference between profit and not making profits, but losing money week in, week out, and the existence of the business. Really.
Now, against that backdrop, you've got a good record with your occupancy, and that's in there for a reason. So that's at page 34 through to 37. And why that's in there? Obviously it's gone up. We all know why. I think everyone in this room is aware that there's this little thing called COVID going on. But you can see there that there is a good occupancy rate of 72%. Now, why that's important is if what was contained in the review application was correct, that these premises every single night they're scrapping on the street and people are spilling out, you wouldn't get an occupancy rate like that, and nor would you get an occupancy rate like that if the noise coming from regular entertainment was unbearable. Now, most people who are staying there probably spend what, 10 o'clock?
Yeah,
11. I suppose it varies, doesn't it? But just make the point that is not in accordance. Those figures are not in accordance with the picture that you've been asked to accept by the applicant. And then turn if I may to page 38. This is publicly available information that relates to the properties over the road. That is Mr. Poulton's at 141. That may have actually duplicated something in there. Apologies for how actually I just realised that. And then obviously Mr. Morales at 139. And I just make the point, and I always have to be careful about this, because nobody who lives next to a licensed premise should have to put up with an unreasonable interference in their life. Nobody should, just because a pub's been there longer, should have to put up with a level of interference that is a nuisance or is unacceptable, or that makes them unhappy or impacts negatively on their life, reasonably so. I'll just make that qualify what I said with that. Now, these properties were bought in March 2019. They knew the pub was there. The licence was available and would be available on the public register. They have made a conscious decision to buy property next to a pub. Now, I live next door to a pub in the Jury Quarter for 8 years, literally next door to the Red Lion in the Jury Quarter. And you know what? Sometimes, every now and then, 1 in the morning, there'd be people arguing outside my bedroom window. Well, I live next door to a pub. I bought a property next door to a pub. And if it had happened every night, and if it went on all the time, absolutely, I would have gone and spoke to the manager, which, by the way, the applicant did not do. Mr. Poulton did not come over and try and have a conversation with me. He just whacked a review application in. I would say that's contrary to the Section 182 guidance, which encourages parties to enter into discourse at an early stage before going to a review application. So I'm not making this as an overwhelming point, but it's absolutely right to say that relatively recently, these individuals have bought a property opposite my client's premises, and all of a sudden they now say it's not acceptable what's occurring in the pub. And so I would again just invite you to factor that in. And I just want to clarify, I'm not saying that people who live next door to a pub have not got a right to complain, but that they have to accept a level of interference in their lives, because living in a town centre, you get so many benefits that go with that, about having amenities on your doorstep and being able to eat out and without having to drive there. Then just invite you, if I may, to turn to page 47. You want to just, sorry, Leo, just explain about the bedrooms and what you did with the gardens to the rear when you planning application. Do you mind doing that?
No. Yeah, it's we had a problem with the residents at the rear of the coach hotel. Not just us, but when we bought the premises, this problem was there. But when we actually obtained the premises, nobody considered looking for a solution to the problem the residents were having, because we're close to the garden. So we decided that we would close down the concert area,
which is to the rear, isn't it?
It's to the rear by the residents, and look for a solution that we might be beneficial to us and to the residents, and to maybe stop the noise going that way. So those are the plans that we put in to the council, which was objected by COSL, to try and remedy any problems that might be there, and hopefully that the residents, both parties, would be happy with. And I think eventually, if we hadn't had the objections from COSL council itself, it's took us over 2.5 years of losing £5,000 a month to try and resolve this problem. And thankfully, the planning committee could see what we're trying to do and actually granted us the planning. But I will say it wasn't with any help from COSL town council.
And I think it's right for me to say, correct me if I'm wrong, that none of those residents to the rear have made any reps, have they, in favour of this application? No. So yeah. So to suggest you don't enjoy good relations with your neighbours, what would you say to that?
Well, I think we couldn't do any more than as a company than we've done. I think if we'd been a larger company there, I think we've done anything in our power to help the residents and look at what they were considering to be a problem. And we've spent our money in building a block of rooms right against their properties to buffer any noise going in their direction. So
just lastly, not that I'm going to dwell on this at all, is the response to the freedom of information request at page 56, which is not in accordance with the representation that was made by the council, which said they fully supported the planning application. That's just simply wrong. It's not necessarily hugely relevant, but I just make the point that a public authority making a strident assertion like that, and then I ask them a question a week later and they come back and say, we opposed it and we recommended refusal. People need to fact check better. The last one, page 57, was going to be a cross-examination point for me if the applicant had graced us with his presence, but he hasn't done that. So I don't need to dwell on that. So I'm conscious I've gone on for some time, but there are really good reasons for that. There are a number of representations that have been made. There are a number of assertions that are made about this premise that it would appear from what some of the members have said at the beginning, they've formed a view already about, which I'm hoping I've gone some way to address, because in actual fact, when you drill down, I mean, what we're dealing with here, I suppose, is an applicant who can't be bothered turning up, who's made the application, who isn't here for me to ask questions of him. I would have thoroughly, professionally, of course, but I would have, on behalf of my client, wanted to test what he'd said, which I'm not being able to do. I wanted to do that in a very thorough fashion, but I've been denied the opportunity of doing that on behalf of my client. So I would just say, if he's not here to respond to those questions, you've got to, I would respectfully submit and attach a limited to wait to what he said in his review application, given what we've said to rebut that, and given what I know that the people behind me are going to say about what's said in the review application. You've then got the representation of the police, which are, when you actually break it down and look at the last 12 months, and when you actually look at the incidents that aren't really incidents, what you've got is maybe, like I said, 3 or 4 incidents in a year. And what we don't have is anything to attach them to these premises, certainly in a couple of those instances. And just go on to make the point, that's all we have. You just have some logs. You don't have any other evidence to support what's being said there. A number of these, and let's put the cards on the table here. My client has a serious question mark about the motives of the applicant in bringing this review application. And that is founded upon what he feels is a number of phone calls that are being made on a spurious basis, which seem to have made their way into this log. We've got an applicant who has, we have footage of him walking to the premises and chucking a wine glass in and walking away. He must have known it smashed. It just simply is inconceivable. Now, what he may have said if he was here, well, I threw it and it broke by accident. We've all done that. We've all put something somewhere. But you know what? He walked away. He turned around and he walked away and he crossed the road, knowing that it smashed, when there could have been a kid walking out there. And then you add to that the highly questionable representations that weren't allowed in, that mirror one of the other representations. This just does not, it stinks to me. And listen, I think I can say with some confidence, I probably do more review applications than any other lawyer in the country, in fact, and review hearings than any lawyer in the country. So I can speak with some authority on this. And I'm not trying to throw my weight around here. And I am, by the way, the other thing is I am not a conspiracy theorist. When it comes to many of my other colleagues, I deal with people who are far bigger conspiracy theorists than me. But there is something about this that just does not tally up to me. And so you're being invited by Warwickshire Police off the back of what is a very iffy application to me to take an hour away from this premises. And I would just submit, you do not have the evidence before you on the balance of probabilities to say that that is a proportionate step. And of course, if there are issues with the premises going forward, then Warwickshire Police are in a position to deal with that. And I'm sure, based on what's been said today, that they will, if they have concerns about the premises, then there'll be dialogue between me and them. And if that isn't productive or purposeful in the way it unfolds, then the police have the right to take steps under Section 51 of the Licensing Act. But what we're dealing with today is, in my view, a spurious and questionable review application, and it simply would not be right. It would be contrary to the interests of justice, the interests of fairness, for you to take any steps against this licence. And so, thank you very much for listening. And I'm sorry I went on so long, but I'm done now. You'll all be glad to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Any questions for Mr. Craig? Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I need to back my police up because there are incidents at that pub. There are references to the incidents at that pub. And I do object to you saying that they don't have incidents on record for that pub.
Didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
I didn't.
You said that it was like, coming out for a green party, really. They got there and there was nothing there.
Well, in a number of those cases on the log, it says that.
Well, all I've done is opened one here.
Which one?
I can't say any numbers, can I? It's all restricted.
I think he means page and.
There's a page on the bottom right.
Okay.
Yes.
66 of 78.
Okay, who's that from? Can you tell me who that's from?
I can't tell. Wait, what?
Can the police tell us who it's from?
Potentially, but we've redacted all the files for Sleepy's public hearing.
Yeah. But you can't just make these outward statements that there's nothing going on.
I didn't say there's nothing going on.
Yes, you did.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
Madam, I did not say nothing was going on. But don't say I've said something I haven't said.
I mean, page 60, there's 2 pages of telephone police. I've got from page 21 to 78 in my hands here, and it's full of incidents.
Sorry, which incident are you referring to?
I said I've got from page 21 to 78, which is incidents from police.
Okay, well, I did make the point, and if I've not made it eloquently enough, I'll make it again, that these incidents, as they've been referred, range from matters that have been verified by the police when they turned up, to incidents where the police have turned up and found nothing, to other incidents where there is simply no evidence other than a phone call that's been made. Now, if I will say this now, if you are relying upon any incidents as part of your decision that haven't been verified by a police visit, then I would invite that to appear in the decision and the reasoning for the decision, because at the point that I'm making here is that anyone can ring the police up, anyone can make an allegation against the premises, but without any particulars and means of backing that information up other than a phone call, it simply can't be relied upon as evidence of an incident that's occurred. It can't.
So you're saying anybody that calls and makes an incident and the police take that incident and number and then they follow it through, you're saying it's not an incident in your eyes?
I think in some instances there is insufficient evidence on the papers to attach any weight to some of these incidents. Yes, I fully accept, which is why I took such strident issue with what you said. I have acknowledged that some of these incidents, I think it's probably right to turn to the police schedule. I'll do that. So let me just get to that, which is contained at page 15. And you were referring to incidents that are more than a year old. What I've tried to focus on.
Well, it's a mixture of 21 to 22. So let's get it right.
No, what I said, madam, was that I've focused on the last 12 months because I think that's what's most relevant. But I haven't dealt with matters outside those 12 months. And so I've gone from number 6, which is the 30th of August of last year, which was the first incident in the last 12 months. So I've gone from that. And I've acknowledged, for example, that I acknowledged the first of those incidents was a verifiable incident. I did. I remember saying it. I remember saying that it's accepted that the premises called the police and there was a fight and that the police attended and there were no injuries and they waited till the group had left in taxis.
So can I just read the one I'm just looking at? Yes. Incident states female has been punched.
Which number,
the
please?
Female on page 52. The female has gone to hospital. She has been asked about this and does not know the informant. She was punched. So,
Sorry, let me just.
Page
Yeah, no, I know that,
52.
I know that. I'm trying to find the date. and incident.
15th to the 1st,
Yeah, well,
22.
that was the other one that I acknowledged was possibly an incident. I did acknowledge that. I acknowledged number 6 and number 12. I accepted, although you knew nothing of it, but I accepted that potentially could because somebody went to hospital. But it is at 1:15 in the morning. The premises closes at midnight. But I have acknowledged, I think I said 3 or 4 of these incidents can, I think on balance, probably be attributed to the premises.
Yeah.
So I've said that.
So this is the bouncer where the nose ring was ripped out of somebody's nose at 11 minutes past 9. 1st of the 4th, 22. Age 54.
And the CCTV on review showed that it was by a member of staff who was assaulted by a member of the public, even though the initial complaint that came in.
But it's in the pub. Yeah. Yeah, on your premises.
No, well, the complaint was that, as you read it. We obviously have CCTV, even though there's CCTV up and down the high street. The applicant's got 3 cameras actually pointing into our property. The only person who seems to have it available is myself. But when that incident, we went back and had a look at it, the member of the public there has obviously said that they've been assaulted. Our CCTV shows that my door staff was assaulted, and it's acknowledged at another point by the police when they also investigated that.
Silly quick question about representation. So previously, obviously, you'd said when the supporting cast were in, saying that obviously there wasn't much evidence. It was all. You said it may not be a conspiracy, I believe, but you have some conspiracy theories. What I find interesting is that most of your representations come from businesses that actually profit by the fact that the coach is here. So my question would be, would they still support the coach if they didn't get profit out of that situation? And that would be a fair question.
It is a fair question. No, I've got no issue with that at all. Well, first of all, I wouldn't agree that it was most, but certainly there are a couple of the 7 that are from local businesses, and I think it's right you can attach less weight to them than you can from local businesses. I don't think there's any issue with that. And yes, people have their own agenda. I guess that's a fair comment too. Yeah.
So Phillips.
Yes, so I do take umbrage with you saying at the beginning part of the session that we've made up our mind before.
Well, it sounded like it.
Yes, but I do take umbrage with that because we obviously will take balance review. Anyway, my question is a couple, and one is during the decibel reading, you said that it was regulated entertainment. What was regulated entertainment, please?
It would be DJ, wouldn't it?
You can vary. It's mainly DJs, sometimes bands, singers.
When you were doing that recording,
when
you were doing the decibel,
I mean, I do have to say one thing about the premises license I found a little bit strange, is that there is regulated entertainment up until midnight, but then there is reference to regulated entertainment being disapplied. But that simply does not is not in accordance with the operator schedule, which clearly states that regulated entertainment takes place till midnight. It is authorised till midnight. So yeah, and what time was that taken? That was about 9 o'clock, was it?
I've taken quite a few. I think that was 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I don't know the pub very well, so just some general questions from me personally. What is the average age of your clientele?
It can vary. When we have a big variation from pensioners right through to, so I mean, we have a door limit of 21, so it's 21 and over per entry. We get every person from 21 years old. We had his 70th birthday in there 2 weeks ago on Saturday. So
I think it's fair to say that it's predominantly locals that frequent it.
It's not predominantly locals, yeah.
And a lot of people who've attended the place a long time.
It's repeat customer, a lot of the same sort of faces and people that you see sort of a weekend. You'll see them in Morrison's during the week. Those kind of people. You tend to be on first name basis with a big sort of chunk of them as well. So it's the same kind of people. We're talking about sort of on average about 60 people a weekend. So,
And just to start, are you pulling people in from the surrounding area now? So I noticed sort of, just going to, because obviously we have to take the instance, I'm trying to get the feel.
yeah,
So from 2019 onwards, obviously we had COVID and you obviously invest in the business and it's increasing capacity and there's more activity there. Would you say that sort of there's more activity as time's moved on and pulling in more hunters?
no, I mean, it's been very difficult over the COVID period. I mean, we've had to sort of make a hard concentration on all aspects of the business to try and cover the sort of severe losses that we had. But in terms of obviously when we were permitted to open during COVID, it was very restricted. Social distancing, tables and seats, to 10 p.m. curfews. The level of staff that we had to employ to facilitate all of that had sort of doubled and trebled. So it was a very difficult period there. And since we wouldn't really have reached pre-COVID levels, really.
That's the question. Thank you.
Any more questions, members?
Oh, I should just make the point, because Warwickshire Police raised this, there is an error on the website and that will be corrected. Apologies. I should have spoke to you about that a few days ago and I forgot. So sorry about that. That's probably my fault. Not anything, but that's just a, I think that's a relic of your old website.
It is, yeah, it's just an oversight. It's not.
It's just one question, but remaining for the gentleman there. How many staff do you employ? I know you said 11, but is that all together with your cleaners and?
It's 11. There'd be 11 and the 3 directors as well. So we've excluded ourselves from
the door staff including that is
door staff are a third party company, so they're not employed directly. Again, with
directly employed.
Yeah, again with entertainment door staff, they're companies that are outsourced aren't employed directly by us, but they are paid for by us.
Anybody else got some questions, please?
Regarding the time you took the decibel reading, can I ask why it was done at 9 p.m. when our biggest complaint is 10, 11, 12 o'clock? There was no video proof showing that.
Yeah, you can gladly come to my office. I've got them from 8 o'clock when the entertainment starts right through until 12 o'clock when it finishes.
It's just Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Saturday.
Just Friday.
10 till 12 is where the issues
are
big problems.
I've got the CCTV that you're more than welcome, as is anybody here to come and do that.
I'll make a couple of points about that. I think it's right that I do. First of all, I don't think it'd be right for me to suggest that is as it's not purely scientific. I don't think it's overwhelming. That environmental health will go down and measure things in a much more systematic and established fashion. It was simply a rough exercise just to demonstrate that. I'm not commenting on your property, madam, because it wasn't from there, but it was from the applicant's property. That it was just simply a way of demonstrating that what was suggested in the application just simply isn't correct based on those reading. I would also make the point that, Anton, you have repeatedly said to environmental health, you invited them down to come and do readings. You've said that to them.
I've not only that, I've asked them to come down because I thought that would be. I mean, those readings are just myself with a device I've purchased from Amazon. Just to try and sort of give everybody a barometer of. I mean, I feel like I'm the master of decibel readings now, but that's only after weeks and weeks of doing it myself. But I've asked environmental if they were to come down, do their own investigation unannounced at any point in time, any day of the week, unannounced. Then we've got somebody who's completely independent who can come in and give us a yes or no, one way or the other. I've encouraged that. I've asked for that. The previous times that has been done, there has never once been a complaint from the panel, not once.
That's because when those have happened, the pub's gone quiet for those 3 weeks. Which, if it stayed quiet like that, none of us would have any complaints.
It's the same entertainment. So I'd be to suggest that when North Warwickshire Council Environmental turned up, they just happened to have everything went quiet for 3 weeks. Seems very peculiar to me.
Thank you. The officer.
Yeah, just carried on from the noise reading. Why was it done on a Monday?
Why was it done on a Monday?
Friday, was
It was on a Friday.
I thought you said that the second reading was done the day after.
There was a reading that was taken on Monday or Tuesday morning, just as a comparison, basically, to show you on 10 to 11 on a Monday morning. Because I know, obviously, we're all just looking at numbers going up and down. It's fairly meaningless to sort of everybody. So that video was taken as a comparison to show this is the decibel reading of the traffic
on a Monday morning.
On a Monday morning at 10 to 11 in the morning. And then if you see that as a comparison in the evening, it was
basically the same, isn't it?
Well, it was quieter.
Quieter.
I mean, it's basically, it's less than the noise, the volume of traffic. And I'd just like to say as well, if it was a nuisance, if it was too loud, it's of no benefit for me to not tone it down. I'll gladly tone it down. I've got no issue with it. It's not, this is all obviously, I'm the person who's dealing with all this grief, and it'd be fairly nonsensical for me to make my own life difficult just by turning music down. I would quite happily do that. But I know myself, we're talking from here to the opposite end of that room. It's just not humanly possible that music can be causing a disturbance. And I think the fact that the applicant isn't here to argue his case for it speaks a lot as well. Because it's not possible. It's not even, it might be, it might not. It's just not possible.
And all I can say, based on my visit to the premises on that Friday, I mean, I did just turn up. And again, I'm not trying to say this is as good as the right, but there's just no way that any of that noise was going inside that property. No way. Absolutely no way.
Any more questions? Councillor Simmons?
Just a quick one. Where you show the video with the applicant coming in and dropping the glass or putting the glass in when he's holding his broom.
Putting.
Do you have that from the other side? Because obviously you've got the glass broken there. Do you have the actual act of it coming in and being broken?
Yeah, I showed that.
No, it was just that broken. It was separate.
No, there was one from the street where you see him throw it in, and then there's one from inside. I can play it again.
Where it was broken. Have I misseen that?
Yeah.
Because it was just sat there broken. I didn't see that it come in.
Well, that was the first one, which was actually superfluous. Actually, there was you saw the guy walk over. So the first thing you saw was him walking over with the broom and throwing it in. And then the next clip I showed was from inside the door, and you see him throw the glass in, and you see it smash. 100%. I mean, isn't that what everybody else saw?
Can I just say, if you'd seen him actually stand there and drop it, but you see it going through, and then you see it on the floor. You see what it...
Shall I play it again?
No, I don't want to see it.
There is absolutely no way. And by the way, you are free to view it, because I think it's been...
It's on YouTube, isn't it?
No. There is absolutely no way he did not know that had smashed. He may not have seen it smash, but he was there and it smashed, and you could see it smash, he would have heard it smash. There's no question. If I was on the jury, I would say I'm sure that he knew that smashed. And if anybody's any doubt about that, I'm more than happy to play it again. There's absolutely no way he did not know. None.
Any more questions? Does the representatives from support?
Yes. Whichever order you want to go in, and those that are supporting, so we've got 3 people who want to speak in support.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I've actually lived there 24 years. 25 is an exaggeration. I moved there from Solihull when I opened a business in Charlton furniture short store. My children have all grown up there, and I've worked both employed and voluntary at Woodlands. So my horses are kept locally, so I am a local person, and I love living in Coastal, so we just get that out there. Obviously, there's issues in Coastal. I don't believe it's all coming from the coach. I will say I do drink in the coach. I worked there years and years and years ago. 3 owners previous where I met Ken and other people. Fair to say, Ken's a bit older than me. And I was drinking with someone the other night. She's in her 70s. And she's a professional, her husband used to drink in there, so it's all across the board. It's not just how it's made out to be. I live behind the Red Lion. Again, I will say, I do feel like they are favoured. I have put into the council, I mean, you allowed them to have a festival that's normally held in the croft against my fence panel. I did complain to the council. Well, it was because I went to the council twice and licensing actually went out to them. They have got a bar in the car park that they serve from and tables up against my fence. When they have a barbecue, the smoke comes over. Again, I've got videos of that. So, but I did move in next to a pub, so I don't complain unless it's a serious issue, like when they had the Carlicious Festival in there last year, and licensing were quite shocked that that was about to go on. Now, not one person in Coleshill said anything about that. Secondly, I am more, my children have grown up in Coleshill. I would rather them drink in Coleshill than going to Birmingham. They're now, I mean, there was two, the youngest, he's now 21, my eldest is 29. I'd rather them be in Coleshill than in Birmingham. So that was another point. And again, I do know the staff because I see it. The bar staff, the doormen are strict. They search everyone, they go through the bags, including me. They staff about, they do love the customers, we all do get on, but they do ID people, and I don't know if I'm right, but I'm sure it's like Challenge 21, isn't it, in there? You know, and if I've seen them ask for ID, so I just think these do get a lot picked on, and I mean, obviously we all know where they are. The pubs all move down that way, so that trouble could come from the Red Lion, the Georgian Dragon, the hotel, they're next door to each other. So I do think there is unfair things going on at the moment. And that's me. I do drink in there, so, but I'm not young. I'm not being biased. I'm quite happy letting the children drink in there. I pick glasses, bottles out of my garden from the Red Lion, but I chose to get put by a house next to a pub. And another thing, the Red Lion don't have door staff. These have got door staff. And there is quite, I know there's a lot of incidents that have gone on over the last 2 years, during COVID as well, in the Red Lion, that have been reported, and no staff. So I think there's a bit of an unfair. I feel safe in there, and I've lived there a long time. So, and they're lovely people. COVID, this man can be a bit of a tyrant. With COVID, he was very, very strict on it, and even to the point my niece used to work there before she went to uni to become a paramedic, and he believed she'd been in contact with someone in COVID and told her to go home, and even though she hadn't, and was very strict, he made her come back with a negative reading. So I think there's quite a few, you know, things flying around to make these look like bad people, and I don't believe it.
Any questions for the lady?
Not so much a question, but a point of clarification, really. Just two things. One, with regard to other public houses, if there's complaints to be raised, they need to be raised separately and not as part of the licence review for this public house. But secondly, the point that was made about a Carlicious Festival, which it wasn't.
Well, it was similar. It was what you normally have on the clock.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
I have a video on my phone if you want to watch it.
That's absolutely fine, but it wasn't anything to do with the town council.
Over
The
100
town council
people.
don't have any jurisdiction to give permission or not. For
Over
the event.
100 people, but what I'm trying to say is the Red Lion have a bar set up in the car park and serve people. There's no staff on. They have over, I would say, over at least 25 tables, probably 35, with umbrellas. There's no staff in there. Now, the overspill from this pub then walks down the high street. There's nobody governing that pub. And what I'm trying to say is, but what I'm trying to say is, build a picture here. These three pubs are in closely put together. So a lot of the things that come out of this pub and that pub are going past this pub. So it's really not fair.
Well, to make it fair, I invite the whole council to drop by any Friday or Saturday night to my garden, which is right next door, and we can see that it is.
Would you like to speak?
I'd just like to say, I was a licensee for nearly 30 years. I worked for three big companies, Amstel's, Scottish, Newcastle, and Green King. And I know how difficulties when you get neighbours that seem to not notice the bought a house next to a pub. So I don't know what to look at. But all I can say is, before this gentleman came to that pub, the bank owned it, and they didn't care really who got the license for it. And the people that ran the pub for the bank, they were just purely profiteering. They just wanted to make money. There was no sense of decency or sort of regulation or nothing like that. When this man came, I started using the pub again. And the money he spent at the hotel, he's changed the pub from Noah's Ark into a pleasure cruiser, because people stay there, they love the place, and they've all got good compliments.
I will quickly say, the other week I popped in 8 o'clock of an evening, done my horses, went in for a little glass of wine, and there was a gentleman came in and he'd stopped there 3 years ago before. I've put an awful lot of weight on him since COVID. He didn't recognise me. He must have said to the bar lady, "Is that Georgina?" He's from Ireland. He stopped there for 6 months and he came back to come and see people in the pub that he'd sat and had a drink with. And that says a lot for the people that are in there. And we're older
Conscience at the time, so. Does anybody else want to ask this gentleman any questions? No, just the gentleman, sorry, Mr. Want to speak?
Well, I've got nothing more to say really, I don't think so. I think everything's been said that we need.
Representation.
No, I didn't.
He's the director of the licensing.
Representation.
You and you did ask him various questions.
Yes, so it's
Yes, my name's Dale Glastonbury. I've got a cafe on the hill on the High Street of Coleshill. I'm not here to defend or support anybody, but we do have business from the coach. When people stop, they kindly direct us to us, because at the moment they have no kitchen facilities, but I know that will change in the next 18 months or so. But coincidentally, we've also getting business from the people opposite them, because they don't want to stop there, and they walk down to our cafe and have breakfast with us as well. So I have no favouritism with anybody. I have a business to run, and yes, I know the point was made over there that would other people make if the business wasn't there. We are all in business to make money. I go in the coach, I drink in the coach. I have 2 sons, and one of them works in the Red Lion. One of them, and we all frequent all the pubs in Coleshill. We are, as Caroline will say, a community. We like to spread our money evenly against whoever we can. So I have no loyalty to anybody here. Yes, the coach are generous to other people, to the business they sent down to us. But as I said, we have people that stop in the Swan. They don't like the buffet breakfast the Swan serve, so they walk up to us because they like the individual service that we give people. We are a business and we need to survive. I live above the cafe. And yes, there's Friday nights and Saturday nights are noisy. But you, as the lady said, you choose to live on the high street, you take that with it.
Any questions from the gentleman? No?
Just one. When you say the people over the road, do you mean the people who made the review application?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the question. Which you can't say.
Yeah, we had people recently the weekend of the festival. People stopped there and they walked down to us and had the breakfast with us. So me and my wife have no loyalties to anyone in the high street.
So they're running a commercial business from there?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we come to the closing statements.
if you're happy to, if we hear from the parties in turn, with closing statements, I'll then there's a few words I want to give you some legal advice when you've done that before you make your decision.
Okay.
I think it's probably right to go in the same order as we started and to go around for closing statements.
But not the applicant.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do appreciate the arguments that have been presented here. But I would say that there has been a lot of incidents at the coach. None of them are repeat callers. If we felt that these calls were false, we would obviously take action on the people calling us. It's massive cost to us on a Friday and Saturday evening. Unfortunately, it's been some sort of some issues with the CCTV, but I did look at the last two incidents that reported to us on the CCTV, them being the one on the 5th of June. I did clearly see a vehicle pull up to the licensed premises whereby an argument occurred. And also, again, on the 15th, I did observe a male standing outside the entrance to the coach, and then he walked over to another group of males across the road. I appreciate I don't know where these other males came from, but a fight did take place in the high street. It does concern me that, like I said previously, that the coach does have a lot of incidents when I compare it to other venues on the high street. And for me, I know Coleshill quite well, and the last thing I want Coleshill is to have a reputation on a Friday and a Saturday night, people from maybe out of the area come down and congregate in Coleshill and then obviously end up having a fight.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that the coach is sort of almost two pubs, Sunday to Thursday and Friday and Saturday nights are quite different. And, you know, it is fair to say that there's a lot of the community that use the pub, as do all the pubs in Coleshill. But from the representations that have been made to myself over the last few years around noise in the summer where people are sitting in their gardens behind, the antisocial behaviour that drops into the road, and the damage to property and the antisocial behaviour in terms of urinating, broken glass and things in front of people's properties. They're the things that have been raised to myself and the town council, and I think it's worth that a consideration to reduce and to review the licence on that basis, on the basis that it is a very different place on a Friday and a Saturday to it is in the rest of the week.
Thank you. Would you like to make?
I'd just reiterate, if we could have Sunday to Thursday, what we get next door, we'd be quite happy. No one would make any complaints. But come Friday and Saturday, it's a different crowd. It's younger people. It's just a completely different atmosphere, and nobody can actually go outside. And if they could just actually get that under control, everyone in the area would be a lot happier with it.
It's me, sorry, I was away. I think what this turns on actually is the police log, which is contained at pages 15 and 16 of the police representations, because what that provides a list of quote unquote incidents that you are being asked to rely upon. So I would just invite you to take into account. So that deals with the last 12 months. I think that's right. I think that's the correct period to deal with. And it is when the restrictions ended around that time as well. So we're dealing with numbers 6 through to 16. And I acknowledge, just for the avoidance of doubt, that incident number 6, 12 and 14 and arguably 15 and 16 to be fair, but the police have said about this footage, well, we don't have it before us, you can't speculate on that. But the police say they've seen that footage. So at the very most, there are 5 incidents there. I would just invite you and urge you, if you feel any of those other incidents, namely 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 13, can be relied upon evidentially in any way, then I would invite that to be contained within the decision. And I would say that on the basis that there are 5 incidents in 12 months, I don't think that is a high figure at all for a town centre pub. And that is on the basis that a couple of these incidents took place at 1 o'clock when the premises has been closed for an hour. There are 2 other licensed premises in the vicinity which could just as easily be responsible for what's been alleged there. And you are being asked quite glibly actually just to take an hour off these premises like it's no big deal, like it's just not a big deal, it's just an hour. Well, it is a big deal, otherwise I wouldn't be sat here now. So we say that this application is misconceived, but we are here today and we have to respond to the points that have been raised. And I would also invite you that you heard evidence from local residents on both sides. And I would invite you to take into account the positive things that have been said as much as those that aren't as positive. And so for those reasons, I would thank you for listening to me and just invite you to take that into account, take the fact that there was no nuisance been established at the premises and leave the licence as it is. And if there are incidents going forward, I don't doubt that the proper responsible authorities will deal with that as they see fit, including Warwickshire Police who sit next to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Would you like to make a closing statement?
Just I didn't point out I am as close as the people that have put this forward. So, you know, I don't think it's as bad as it's made out.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, the council mentioned all the damage and noise and urination and all that. What's your foundation for thinking it all comes from the coach hotel?
So this is
Anybody can do
it. This is just making a summary of any points you want to add rather than ask questions. We've had this opportunity. I don't know if there's anything you want to
No,
add.
it is not.
So the other gentleman said he had to leave to pick up his son. That's why he's not here to make a closing statement. So.
At this time, normally the applicant has the right of the final reply and he's not here tonight. So I thank you all very much for all the statements and what we've heard tonight. I will now close proceedings and the licence subcommittee will retire, or we will stop here.
If I can just
Clive will
point out
for me before
matters before you do retire. You've heard from most of the parties tonight, not all of them. Obviously, you also have to take account of what they're putting in writing. As I mentioned at the outset, it's a right to attend, not an obligation. If someone doesn't attend, it doesn't mean that what they put in their application, representation, etc., has no weight. It's a question of how much weight, as with everything you've heard tonight. You have been referred to loosely by Mr. Craig to a couple of points in the guidance, and I want to just touch on those in a bit more detail. It's right that the guidance generally talks about a discussive approach, and that's probably the way to try and deal with issues before the formal processes, but it's not a prerequisite. We can't, as a committee, sit here and say, because you might not have had a chat about this beforehand, we can't take account of your application, we can't take account of what you say. It is unfortunate that it's come to this stage, but I say it doesn't negate what's ongoing. Mr. Craig also made the point that the applicant isn't here. Now, as I said, you still have to take account of what he said, but everything tonight before it was a matter of weight. I think what is very important to point out is that even if you were to find that his failure to attend and the fact that he appears to have been shown throwing glass into the premises undermines some of what he says, that doesn't mean that everything else must fall as a result. So it means that what you've had in other representations from other parties can still be considered, even if you decided to give no weight to what he said. I'm not suggesting that that's what you do. I'm just saying that the other parties' representations are not dependent upon that. Having regard to those points, clearly it's a matter of finding, and I know you've done this before as a committee, looking at this and saying, are any of the licensing objectives undermined by what's gone on, and is any of that fault of the licensee? Having done that, do you think that any action can be taken to deal with those problems if there is any fault on the part of the licensee? Case law says that a license for premises is a piece of property which is protected under the Human Rights Act. What that means is that any interference with it has to be in accordance with the law. It has to be necessary for the purpose of the Human Rights Act and proportionate to the objective that's being sought. The guidance refers to the steps that can be taken. It also mentions that when a licensing committee, it's paragraph 11.23, the licensing committee decides to take action, it should always have regard to any detrimental financial impact that may result. But if the premises were found to be trading irresponsibly, that alone should not make the authority hesitate from taking tough action if it's appropriate in the circumstances of the case. Clearly, what's appropriate depends on the findings that you make. Now, there are there's effectively 6 steps you can take. They're set out in the report. The first step, even if you were to find fault, might be that you can't see anything that's needs to be done. You could take no steps at all. But depending on what your findings are, you may also consider modifying the conditions of the licence. And so that means you could change what's already there, add new ones, take some off if you think they're no longer relevant, and replace them. You could exclude a licensed activity if you think that's causing a problem that can't be met in a way. You could remove the designated premises supervisor if you consider that they were causing the problem. You can suspend the licence for a period not exceeding 3 months, and you can revoke the licence. So that's in summary. But those are to be considered in that order. That if you were to find there is an issue, you shouldn't jump to the toughest of those sanctions. You should consider what is the bare minimum to be done to deal with any problems that you see as being caused. And was one other point that was made in one of the representations from Mr. Petch, and I think it's being touched on several points. The fact that someone may have moved near to a pub that has a licence doesn't mean that they are not protected. It's not the case that just because you happen to go and live there, that means any nuisance could be, or other problems could be caused. Suggesting that you make that finding that there is nuisance or a problem, but that in itself doesn't mean that somebody, just because they happen to have chosen to go and live in that area, is any less protected than anyone else. And I think final point, one more point to make. It was about the anonymous representations. Now, you have before you a pack which has the valid representations, and they're representations that have been made in accordance with the Licensing Act. They are made because the people making them have put their name to them. They've chosen to come forward. Some of them have come tonight to back those representations up. Purposely, the council hasn't, or say, purposely, the licensing officer hasn't chosen to put in anonymous representations for a number of reasons. One is, as pointed out by Mr. Craig, they do have a striking similarity in those, but primarily it's because they're anonymous. Now, the licensing officer isn't asking you to take into account those representations. It's just something Mr. Craig brought up. And he said that bearing in mind the similarity of those anonymous representations, then perhaps the representation which has a similar wording, which isn't anonymous, carries a little less weight. I'm not sure that that's the case. It suggests possibly some contact between those making the representations, because the wording is so similar, but that is someone who has chosen to put their name to it. Of course, once again, it's a matter of what weight you might attach to that. I think that's everything, Chair, unless you have any questions.
No, any councillors, any questions for Clive? No. Thank you very much. The Chairman will close the proceedings and the licensing subcommittee will but I think I'm going to stay here because there's too many of us to go into the boardroom with this heat. Consider their decision. Any of their legal advisor and the person recording the minutes of the meeting will accompany them.
Sorry, do we stay for the decision or do we get the decision? I don't.
No, you can go and have a drink or a break while we make the decision.
Okay. Any particular time or what should we say?
Depends how long we.
When we made it.
Well, what I'm saying is, it might all spring out. 20 minutes, okay. 20
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, officers, councillors. Thank you for waiting. By the council summed this up. Mr. Tobin will read out our comments. Thank you.
The members have taken account of everything they've heard tonight. They've also taken account of the written application, the written representations that we received, and the other materials that were submitted by the parties. It's become clear to members of this committee that there are a number of issues in the area of the coach hotel. This includes a certain amount of nuisance, some antisocial behaviour, and some matters which amount to crimes. Members of the committee sympathise with nearby residents regarding the suffering that they've experienced as a result of those issues. Taking account of the information that's been put before them today and contained in the written representations, members are not able to say with sufficient certainty that the events concerned are directly attributable to the coach or to poor management by the coach, and therefore they are not in a position to take any action in relation to the licence. They would, however, make several observations. The first being that if these premises are subject to another licence review application, some of these matters may be revisited. It doesn't mean that they're now cleared from the record. And obviously, there would have to be some other trigger for a review, but it depends what that is and whether these might also be relevant to that. So they may, in the future, have cause to look at them again. In terms of the way forward, much was said by both sides tonight about the community of Coleshill and how businesses like to support one another and how residents like to make use of the facilities. Members think that it may be to the advantage of all concerned if the coach were to make a very clear avenue for concerned residents to raise issues with them, and for the town council to also engage with them. So whether it's a nominated website, email address, or preferably a phone call, so that there's always somebody who can be available to discuss these matters. And it might be that some things can be sorted out without formal process. The other thing that I say is it's been mentioned by both sides regarding the hours that are advertised on the website. And they say that does perhaps create a bad impression of the premises, but it, on the face of it, would suggest that you're trading outside of your hours. Yeah. So if you could remedy that, then it would show, again, goodwill towards working in accordance with your licence. Everyone will get a written copy of that decision, and that would be sent to them in the next, should be about the next 5 or so working days. And that will set out the rights that parties have in relation to the decision. So that will be made clear to you. What I'd say is that I believe that most people have provided contact details direct to David. Yeah. But if you could just check that he's got the correct contact details to make sure that we get it to you the right place, the right email address, etc.
Yeah, can I just make a point? Because it's right that I do, in respect of point 2 that you made, that phone numbers have been exchanged while we've been waiting on the decision between parties. So that has happened already. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
I don't think you can take, is that the private one, that confidential one, or is that?
No, that's the pack that that's material that we have to, by law, serve on the parties. So by law, any representations have to be served on the licence holder. That's okay. So that's fine to be taken out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.